Need that check.
Chicks over strips.
See if we're live. See if we're live on the channel. Okay, we are live. What's that? Oh. Huh. Okay.
I tell you. Oh no, wait, you're leading this off. Bad timing.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's nothing that makes me more annoyed with an NBA comp than when they compare a player to somebody who just entered the league. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I mean, I know that like in theory they're just doing whatever is easiest to come up with, the imaginary player that they want to put this guy next to, but like they have Dariq Whitehead. You know who that is? Kid that plays for Duke. He's gonna be a lottery. He'll be a lottery pick next year. But the Bleacher Report has him compared to Benedict Mathurin. It's like, okay, I guess. I mean, he,
got that dog in him.
Work a little bit harder than that,
Alrighty. And with that being said, talking about some NBA comps, but welcome everybody to the Charge again. I do apologize that it's been a while. Both Pete and I have been under the weather, and as you can kind of still hear in my voice and my congestion right now, I am still trying to fight off whatever I have, and also preparing for the basketball season as well. So I do apologize that there hasn't been a stream or even some sort of video in a week. So I do apologize for that. But I thought recovering was probably the best thing for me, at least, and I know for Pete and for Brad as well, just to get us all back on the same page and really talking about this season, because I'm excited to talk about what is coming up so far. I mean, we have a lot of kind of interesting news as we are, about 12, 13 games into the season already. We have the Lakers kind of where they're at right now. Klay Thompson, the Warriors are struggling, and we're going to talk about whether or not Klay should start on the team. Well, maybe not start, but, the minutes wise, like who should get more minutes between him and Jordan Poole. And many other things too. Pete wants to bring up some surprising stuff that he's seen throughout the NBA season. And so this is going to be a very interesting situation to kind of look after. But before anybody does that, Nick Russ, no shout out to the veterans. Yeah, you know what? Little shout out to the veterans. We'll shout out to the vets overseas, to my guys out there overseas.
Shouts out to the vets.
But with that being said, before anything, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. All that stuff helps out the algorithm so much. We've been doing such tremendous growth. I mean, I still remember Pete doing that game in the summer where we had like almost over 100K people in there. It was probably the best time of our lives. But again, it can get even better if you guys share this video with people so we can continue to kind of get in those numbers and really talk about basketball in a special way. So with that being said, let us get started with this first story of the day. And that is, of course, that LeBron James does not want the Lakers to waste a season to wait for upgrades in the 2023 season. LeBron James is not interested in wasting the 22-23 season in hopes of reinforcements arriving in Los Angeles during the 23 offseason. Sources tell Chris Haynes of Bleacher Report. I forgot that he moved over there.
I actually didn't know that.
Other core players with the Lakers feel similar in their preference, and that the front office actively seek upgrades by offering their future first-round picks. With the Lakers struggling this start of the season, the front office is concerned, considering that any trade involved these picks will not make a meaningful difference in the outcome of their season. For example, their skepticism in the trade for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield would turn them into title contenders. We know that LeBron James signed an extension, and we know that Rob Pelinka also did that. So, Pete, as I kind of mute myself to cough, what do you think is going on with the Lakers right now? At 2-9, they're struggling a lot. What do you think is their biggest issue currently?
I mean, where to even start? I mean, the biggest one is roster. The roster is just terrible. I mean, if you look at their depth compared to just about any other team in the league, it's hideous. I mean, you even look. I one thing I can't help but look back on our preseason predictions is, shading the Jazz as much as we did. And honestly, like a big part of that, I still feel like, you know, okay about making that prediction. Like by all accounts, they looked like they were trying to tank, and they still might be. The team is just too filled with competent players that's the difference. Like that little part right there, it's competency. Like as an overall average, the mean level of player on the team like the Jazz right now is just better.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Lakers, I mean, you're seeing so many like of the inefficiencies of their best players just stick out even more because there's no way to cover anything. So they're terrible. I mean, one of the biggest things for them is there's no way when LeBron signed that extension, like later in the summer, there's no way he did that without some sort of agreement that they were going to use the picks to trade for somebody or do something. There's just no way. Maybe, I guess, maybe not no way, but almost no way. So to me, I think it's just a matter of like waiting as long as they possibly can to see if anything is available. Like I think Bradley Beal, did you see that was out there yesterday that the Lakers are apparently interested in Bradley Beal?
I mean, I saw some of that, but I mean,
they don't have enough for Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
And this is what I think their plan is, and this is what I was saying, like they should consider. Like you could go get Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, probably, right? The deal was on the table for them. Yeah. But does that change your fortune enough to justify getting rid of all those picks? I genuinely don't think so. So they must be in the same boat of like, let's wait and see. If anybody else is having a catastrophic season and is just trying to get rid of stuff to, get closer to Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson, they're there for it. And I mean, Bradley Beal is a good one to look out for. I mean, if the Wizards do end up saying, you know what, we signed this guy to $60 million, like, are you kidding me? What are we going to do with this? The Lakers would take it. It's just, do they have enough to justify sending him to the Lakers? I still don't think so, but they're looking for situations like that is what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I mean, to me, what's disappointing about the Lakers right now, I'm looking at the stats, I'm looking at kind of what's going on so far. I mean, the fact that you have, your star players shooting under 36% from 3-point land is a pretty alarming thing to see. Like LeBron James shooting at an abysmal 24%. Anthony Davis shooting at 26% when he was working with the shooting coach over the summer. Westbrook shooting the best out of the three with 32.5. And I know that a lot of people are going to want to blame Westbrook. I think all this stuff that the Lakers are dealing with is beyond Westbrook. And
so, yeah, agreed.
And I think that it's kind of, it's interesting to think about like how Westbrook was so much of the scapegoat last year. And again, there was some criticism there. I don't necessarily think that avoiding the criticism for Russell Westbrook is, I think it's justified some of the criticism that he had last year, but you could see from a mile away from the last couple of years that this Lakers roster is pretty abysmal. I don't see any other like role players that can really step up the game that they need to. I mean, guys like Kendrick Nunn were supposed to be an answer. They have not been. Troy Brown Jr. not really doing too much. Lonnie Walker, probably a guy that, you just, kind of rolled the dice on and say, hey, maybe he can give us something. He clearly is not giving you what you need in terms of a assistant player, in terms of maybe not assistant. I don't know why I said assistant player, but it's kind of like that fourth guy, a role player, someone that could give
complimentary
guy. I don't really necessarily think that he necessarily fits that role very well. I think he's more of a guy that you bring on with the second unit. But like looking at kind of like the rest of their guys, guys like Juan Toscano Anderson was supposed to like be an answer. He's definitely not that. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's shocking to see where the Lakers are at, and it's starting to get pretty close to, do we forget about even talking about the Lakers? I do apologize for my coughs here. Oh my God, I'm about to cough again. Pete, you talk.
Well, I mean, the craziest part is like I think we talked about this like a ton over the summer. Like, the fact that they used their only means of signing players to go get guys like Juan Toscano Anderson and Lonnie Walker is astounding. I mean, did you not watch Lonnie Walker in San Antonio? He just wasn't that guy. What did you think? Their team was terrible, and he couldn't be an efficient, decent enough scorer to justify going to get him and thinking that's what he's going to give you. He wasn't a good 3-point shooter on that team. Juan Toscano Anderson, I mean, just so inconsequential to the Warriors winning their title. I mean, whatever you think about him as a player, he's fine. I'm not trying to like go in on him too hard, but when you're looking at the Lakers roster, these are the guys they were signing to be literally, like you're saying, like their fourth, fifth, sixth guys. Like those dudes aren't good enough. Like they're just not good enough in 2022. And I think like it's hard for a lot of people to see this. I think early in the season, especially, but especially this season, like the league is so much deeper than it's probably ever been in the history of NBA basketball. It's probably the deepest it's ever been. So when you look at a roster like the Lakers, that would be a bad roster 5 years ago. What are they now? They're terrible. They're one of the worst. So it's just compounding on the fact that they're already bad, but right now they're especially bad. Like a few years ago, they could have made it work, and there's a few reasons. Is because it wasn't as deep of the league, like I said, but two, you had guys like LeBron in his prime where he could carry more of the weight. It's just that's not how it works. I actually saw a really interesting article from I believe it was on The Ringer. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was a good. I recommend it. It's about it was talking about, is this the end of super teams? Are we already done with the super team? Like is the super team an inefficient way to build a championship contending team in 2022 with the amount of depth that's around the league? And honestly, that could be the case. It really could be. Because there's a few teams that you look at and you see like there's a lot of building blocks for like something that's actually really special. Like the Cavaliers are a great example. And I know that there's people who might say on paper, well, they have Donovan Mitchell, they have Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. They're not a super team. They're not. Whatever you think a super team is, they don't meet the definition. They have a ton of talent at every position all the way down the roster, and they're super well built financially and chemistry-wise. That is the difference. That's the difference.
I mean, I agree completely. I mean, the Lakers right now are trying to figure out what the next step should be for them. I think what is clear and obvious to see from everything is that Jeannie Buss is not willing to go into the luxury tax and not willing to put as much money as she once did before, because I think she's kind of realized that type of stuff isn't there anymore. I mean, the Lakers, for the most part, aren't one of the they're the richest team in terms of like total. I don't know what do you call it when you have all their stuff. It's
like their overall market capitalization or whatever,
like net worth or whatever. Yeah, their net worth or whatever it is. Like, but in terms of like spending money and stuff like that, they're not even at the top. And I think Jeannie Buss likes to run the organization from a standpoint of, she doesn't have the money like like the Clippers owner Ballmer does.
Ballmer, no, can't even compete.
And so I think when you look at that, I think what it kind of shows me is that I think the Lakers, they had something there a couple years ago when they built through the drafting. They had their Brandon Ingrams, they had their mishandle for Randall, D'Angelo Russell, and Jordan Clark, all those guys. And I think you are right in a sense, Pete, that I think that's kind of where the league is going towards, is building through the draft, building through the means of let's just build a team that just works well together, instead of let's just get let's just get 2 or 3 guys that know what they're doing, and let's just like build and kind of have some good to average role players on the side of them and see if we can't win a championship. I mean, those days are over. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when you look at teams like the Warriors right now, like, yes, all guys are superstars on the team, but the way that they play, everybody touches the ball. And I think that's kind of where the NBA is heading towards, is that everybody has to touch the ball in the offense, because what it does is that it allows the confidence of your role players to say, oh, okay, they trust me enough to give me the ball to shoot, to make a decision, and I'm going to make those stuff. And if you empower guys like that to make decisions, to empower guys who are role players to be able to have that freedom of, okay, if I take this shot, the superstar isn't going to kill me because I took that shot, right? And, kind of dips into how many field goal attempts that the superstar takes. But I think the proof is in the pudding right now. Like you're seeing teams like, even the Boston Celtics the years back. I know Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are superstars, but guys like Grant Williams are touching the ball a lot more. Guys like Marcus Smart, guys like Robert Williams. We can even go to the West.
Brogdon. Yeah, even new guys.
The Memphis Grizzlies, like all those guys, the way that the ball is just moving around and just not sticking with somebody. I personally think that that's the way that the NBA should be played. I think that's the way basketball should be played. Like everybody has to touch the rock. Like there's a reason why you can't just hide people in the corner anymore. Everybody has to be involved in the offense.
Yeah, and I think that like we're touching on something that's like a bigger, and without getting too off tangent here, right? Too off topic and out of just basketball. But I do think like culturally in sports and mainstream US sports, we're kind of seeing like how do I put this? We're seeing kind of an overcorrection on the player empowerment era in terms of how it actually affects teams in the way that teams play. And I mean this like across multiple sports. Like I'll give you one example in basketball and I'll give you an example in football. One example in basketball right now is the Jazz. They're a perfect example. If they keep playing the way they are right now, they're going to end up like actually in the playoffs. People are going to keep thinking it's a fluke, but if you watch that team, there's one gigantic difference between them and almost every other team in the West, or all these super teams, especially the Lakers, right? The Timberwolves, compare them to. The difference is teamwork. Nobody is playing bigger than the system that they're in. Everybody is working in tandem to go towards a shared goal. And I think like, and let me give you the football example too now before I get too far. I think the Seahawks are a great example. Like you look at what's going on in the NFL this season and like a lot of the bad football with teams like Green Bay and Tampa Bay and these super high paid quarterbacks, Denver too. The difference is that we overcorrected so far in this player empowerment era of overpaying and like, hey, go get your bag, buddy. You're the superstar. But what's left for everybody else? What's the motivation for everybody else on teams like that? And it was fine for a while. It was fine for a while because a lot of players, I think, got tricked into thinking, oh, if these guys do it, it's going to open the door for me too later, right? It's going to open the door for all of us to get paid. But they realized, like everybody else realized, that's not the case. Those dudes are going to take up the vast majority of the capital of that squad. And then you do have these situations where it is like, oh my God, is Aaron Rodgers going to kill me because I dropped a pass? Is LeBron going to, subtweet me on Twitter because I missed an open three? Like all those things. And I love LeBron, but that's super, super hard to build a culture and a chemistry that is long lasting enough to really compete for a while. And that's why like Steph is majority of the capital. He's not my favorite player. I've hated on Steph many times. That's why he's one of the ultimate superstars in NBA history. He is the ultimate team first player. And it's not even necessarily just how he is when he has the ball. It's what he's doing when he doesn't have the ball. I don't even need to get into it. Everybody knows. But we're seeing an era where the needle is turning the other direction. Teams that actually play together and, like being with each other, they're thriving, they're succeeding. And you see these teams that are just a bunch of high paid guys together and it just doesn't work, man. It just doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's the Lakers, but that applies to everybody. Like that really does. Like it's not that different from the Nets or a ton of other teams. The Lakers are the worst situation of that right now. I agree.
All the time. Oh, sorry, my bad, guys. I was on mute when I made that comment. My bad.
My bad. I heard you.
Yeah. My bad, everybody. What I want to say from here on out, guys that are talking, we want to talk about that. Like when me, Pete, and Brad, or whoever else on the stream, Tyrese as well. Like whenever we're on the stream, we're gonna make our points really quick. Maybe not quick, but we're going to talk about our points first, and then afterwards, we'll get to your guys' comments. And so I just read your comment, drunk. And I said that I was talking about your Rob Pelinka comment about no one wants to take a discount. Let's see here. I do think super teams are dead. Harden, KD, and Kyrie killed it. Building mainly through the draft, I don't consider a super team. What do you think about the Harden, KD, and Kyrie killed it comment? Do you think it's true?
Here, hold on 1 second. Just make sure they can hear you. Oh, they can hear. Okay, they can hear you now. All right, I'm just making sure. I think they were maybe the nail in the coffin that sealed the deal. I don't necessarily think. Let me rephrase it. I think they're more like the final symptom rather than, the actual thing that did it.
Yeah.
I do think that they set such a poor example that it would probably dissuade certain teams from doing it in the future.
Yeah.
But it wasn't necessarily. I think we would have gotten here anyway. In certain ways, I do. Just because it's not necessarily only about the group of guys, it's more about how many good players there are right now. That's the other 50%. Like if you're spending all of your money, like that's why I hate teams like the Wizards right now. Like I'm sorry to Wizards fans, but like you just can't pay all of your money to these guys that don't change enough as far as, or they don't impact everything enough to justify doing it. And even then, there's only a few guys in the NBA that can even do that are that good. And I think that we see a lot of those teams even now are starting to realize that that's not enough. Like, look at the Mavs. They lost to the Wizards last night. Kuz put up 36 or whatever, Kuzma. That is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. That Mavericks team with Luka playing the way he is right now, 5-10 years ago, they would smash that Wizards team. But the difference is that there's just too many competent guys everywhere on the court that if you have all of your assets and money tied up in 1 to 2 guys, it's just not good enough. And I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I think that, like I said, those dudes, a symptom, but they're not the only problem. There's other major things that are leading to this anti-super team situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at right now in the league, and I think you guys nailed it right on the head. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody wants to play, everybody wants to touch the rock, and I think it's going to lead to great basketball. I mean, you're already seeing it right now with some of these great offenses that these team run, and even defense. Like, there's chemistry. There's that willingness to say, like, hey, I'm going to actually play defense for you because, hey, you gave me an opportunity on the offensive end to at least get a bucket. Like, guys, like, just to go to the Warriors example, I think guys like Kevon Looney, like, they're never going to get as many field goal touches as like Steph Curry or Klay Thompson or Jordan Poole or any of these guys. But what you do appreciate is, like, one time just throw it in the low post, see what, get Looney on a mismatch, let him make a layup. And I think that's kind of where, Looney will then play hard on defense and then make a name for himself. Again, empowering guys to actually have opportunities to improve or have opportunities to touch the rock, have opportunities to do the things that they know how to do out here in the league, I think leads to better basketball. It leads to a more fluid game. And like you said, Pete, 20 years ago, Luka Doncic would have been, the Mavs would have been like the number 1 team in the West.
Yeah, they would be 60 wins with that team 10 years ago. 100%.
Yeah, but now it's a different league. It's a different style. And so you can't play that same style anymore like you once did. But, let us know in the comment section down below, people, what you guys think about this Lakers situation. I know that LeBron James is not going to play tonight due to a groin injury. Luckily, there was no tear. But, at the end of the day, I think the Lakers need to start, thinking about what the best move is for them. But, as much as you love LeBron James, the Lakers have to start thinking about what's going to be the best move for their organization. And, whether people like it or not, that's just the way it goes, man.
Before we get off the Lakers, Bernie, let's just ask one last question. What do you think? What do you think is the best move, or what should they do? What should be the biggest first thing they should do to try and maybe not compete this year because I don't think there's anything they can do to really compete this year. But what do you think they should do next?
It's tough because I'm a big LeBron James fan, and I would
Yeah.
love for him to just get that career over Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in a Lakers uniform, which I think he will this year anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things where it's the bed that you lie in, right? It's like you've made your bed with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook. I think you just have to lie. I think you just have to play through it, man. Like I think Darvin Ham, as much as he wants to fake it, saying like, "Oh, like we've got the pieces we need to compete," and things like that. I know he was saying something eerily similar in the press conference the other day. But man, if I was like keeping it real in terms of like, without the LeBron James homer in me, I'd probably just say you got to reset the roster and just try and trade Anthony Davis and
I'd trade him regardless, personally.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, when I think of Anthony Davis, I think back to that 2020 season when he was just the absolute best player in the world at that point, where he was, scoring against Jokic and the Nuggets in the bubble and, like, was the best player in the bubble, I think, in my opinion. And, to where he's at right now, where he's kind of like a shell of his former self. Like I said, if he had the mentality of a Giannis, of an Embiid, or any of these guys, he would be up there as one of the best bigs in the league because of the fact that he has the ability to dribble, he has the ability to shoot, and he's so fluid. I mean, that's kind of the thing that makes me disappointed in a guy like Anthony Davis is that he has all the tools to be that guy. All the tools to, continue that reign of dominance to being that guy, I should say. And it clearly hasn't worked out the last couple of years due to injury, due to whatever reason. And I think the Lakers gotta think like we screwed up in terms of trading away all of our assets. Again, because here's the thing. The tough part is because they won the championship that year in the bubble, it's hard to say that it wasn't worth it. But in terms of like having that longevity like the Warriors do, where that one championship in 2014 when they beat the Cavaliers goes from one championship to where they're at right now with five, I think, right? 4, 5?
4.
Like
with this current group, yeah.
Yeah. And to me, it's kind of like, well, the Lakers could have had that at least. And, it's just kind of one of those things that you have to, maybe they wouldn't have that, but they at least had like another championship to contend for.
I mean, if they realized like one thing that will, we need to get off the Lakers, but one thing that I'll always be super frustrated with is just like how little research these guys did in terms of like what you need to put around LeBron to succeed. They had all the guys, man. They had them. Even if you just like, I know we debated Caruso back at the time, but like he's a perfect fit for LeBron. He's perfect right now. They would kill for Caruso at this time.
Yeah.
Would kill for him. He'd be the third best player on their team. Which is crazy to say, but it is not that far from reality. Yeah, if it was up to me, I would trade AD tonight. I'd get off the contract, reset as much as I humanly can, because they're not going to be good this year. The only thing that can continue to go wrong for this team is that all their assets depreciate in value, and then they have no assets already. So they're just a free agent team for the next 10 years, probably. So
yeah,
I'd go get, you could probably still get 4 firsts in something for AD. You could. Whether or not it's worth for this season is not the question. You shouldn't even be worried about it anymore.
Yeah, and you're going to lose Westbrook this season of free agency, and so you get that money back. But I think
you're going to lose him to free agency. It's almost more like a gain, I think, for them at this point. You're going to gain him going to free agency.
But still, I mean, like think about like you could get the asset part. You could have gotten something from him, and it would have worked a lot better. Because I mean, I'm not sure about this free agency class, to be honest with you. I don't think there's like
it's not a good one.
I don't think there's anybody out there that you're like, yes, I got to get this guy. To help
nobody that changes your fortunes. Yeah. Nobody that changes your outlook as a team. If you're somebody like the Lakers, I mean, if you're already a contender, sure, that's a different story, but they're not even a contender. I mean, they're not really even close. So
not even a play-in team right now, which is the sad part.
It's super ugly. But I bet somebody would sell out to get AD even now. I do think that.
But yeah, let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys think of this Lakers situation? Are the Lakers in super serious trouble? And kind of going on to Pete's question, if you are the Lakers, which player do you trade to help your team win? Let us know in the comment section down below. Alrighty, let's move on to the next story. Unless you got something for us, Pete.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready to go on.
All right, let's move on to the next story, and that is, of course, this story right here. Steve Kerr hasn't considered benching Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson is off to his worst start in his NBA career, but the Golden State Warriors coach Steve Kerr says he has no plans to bench the veteran point guard. When asked if he's considering moving Thompson to the bench in favor of Jordan Poole, Kerr was empathetic in saying no. No, it's not something that I've given thought to, Kerr said. Jordan and Klay are very different players. Jordan's on ball, Klay's off ball. Klay is a starter. That five-man unit is the best in the league. Through 9 games, Klay Thompson has shot a career low 36% from the field, including 32.6 from three-pointer. For his career, Klay Thompson has shot 45 from the floor and 41.5 from behind the arc. All right, Pete. I think we got to start asking the question here as we look at kind of the Golden State Warriors stats here. You can clearly see that both guys play about the same amount of minutes, except, Jordan Poole kind of ticking towards the upside of 29 compared to 28. Am I making a big deal out of should the Warriors consider reducing Klay Thompson's minutes a lot more?
I said it our last stream, so 2 weeks ago. I said that it was one of my cap or no cap segment, bits. I said the Warriors I thought had the worst defense in the NBA. And if you're watching, it's not good. It's not good. It's really terrible. Yeah. And a lot of that problem is that Klay was that guy for this team for a long time. He was their guy. Like, who's their best player on the perimeter? Okay, Klay, you got him. Take over.
Yeah.
They don't have that guy. So regardless if it's Poole or not, it doesn't matter. Like, if I had any say, and actually, so let me start by saying, yes, I think you should reduce his minutes a little bit, right? Like, he needs to keep playing himself into form, even if maybe he doesn't have it. You at least have to give him enough minutes to keep trying to get there, right? Poole is not the answer to what this team needs either, in my opinion. He's critically important. I'm not saying he's not. Yeah. I'm just saying they need some defense. They need something. So if it was me, I'd get Moody some more minutes. Get him some more minutes out on the court. He's long, he's athletic, he can score a little bit, and he's actually a better defender at this point than Jordan Poole and Klay Thompson, probably.
Yeah.
So put him out there. You drafted him for a reason. Either use him or trade him for somebody that does something for you. That's the thing with this team. It's not even a question to me of like, is benching Klay or taking some of his minutes away going to improve this team? It isn't even the question. What are we doing with all these assets that we have, these young guys that don't get enough minutes? Why is Kuminga not getting enough minutes? Why is Moody not getting enough minutes? Wiseman, what even is Wiseman? Do we even have any clue what that dude is? Like, is he a backup center? What is he? I don't get it. We took years to get him on the court, and now this is the payoff for it. It's still, Kevon Looney is still the center for this team. So if I'm them, another team, I think, should just go make a move. They've done everything right up until this point, and this is the huge difference between them and the Lakers. They continually invested in the guys that they drafted, their big three, the dynasty, and they reinvested in youth to continue growing so that they always have these things to move around, pieces to slide in, things to trade out. The problem is that they just won't make any moves, man. It's been years of talking about this team doing something. And I think we were talking about this in our group chat the other night. But like, imagine if they had made that trade using Wiseman, the Wiseman pick and something else, and they went and got Pascal Siakam a couple of years ago. This team is a completely different story right now if they had done that. It's too late to do that. They can't get Pascal Siakam right now. But they still have a ton of assets to go do something. So it's bigger than Klay. I actually feel bad for Klay in the sense that people are looking at Klay to be something he can't be anymore. And it's something that the team that he's on desperately needs. But the problem is that he wants to get paid like he's still that guy. That's the biggest problem. And him and Draymond, getting upset and acting like they are those guys. I thought that Devin Booker situation with Klay was pretty illuminating. It was pretty illuminating, man. That is a dude who is so far in his head that he has to come up with anything he can to talk crazy to young dudes who are cooking him, right?
Yeah.
Like Devin Booker was giving Klay the business that night. And there's a lot of people that think it's super cool to say, I got 4 rings. Like, you're playing a game and you're getting fried right now, man. It's not the finals last year. Like, that's great that you're a 4-time champion, but you're not that guy right now. So I thought that was a big sign of like, this dude is trying to
tell us something.
Not only trying to, like, his body language is telling us something huge, and I'm the body language guy of this of the charge. The body language is terrible, man.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And I do think it looks like a guy who knows that his days are numbered. And that Charles Barkley post-game thingy where he talked about Chuck and what Chuck said. Chuck didn't lie, but that was still, you heard that, right?
Kind of go into it for our audience that didn't hear it.
Okay, so I think it was probably 2 weeks ago at this point. Charles Barkley, the TNT Thursday night crew with Ernie and Shaq, they were talking about Klay and saying Chuck, said what we're saying. Klay is not that guy anymore as far as, the athleticism. He just doesn't have enough with all his injuries to be that guy anymore. Not a lie. But Klay took it super personally and was like, almost like getting choked up in the post-game interview, talking about, that how much it hurt his feelings that Chuck said it. It only hurts his feelings because he knows it's true a little bit, right? Like it wouldn't take that much out of you if you didn't believe it.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for him, but I also think the Warriors need to do a better job of putting him in a better spot to actually succeed and, make their team look better. Because it's not that different, and people are going to instantly jump down my throat, but hear me out. It's not that different than the Lakers with Russell Westbrook situation in the sense that, like, you can't ask a guy to change his stripes or be something he's not and then blame him when he doesn't do it, but he's built his whole career on being this guy, right? That's so not fair as an organization. As an organization, the coaching staff and the GM, I think it's your obligation to your players to do everything you can. And Bernie, I'm sure you feel the same even for your team that you coach. You put those guys in the best position to succeed.
Yeah.
Even sometimes if it hurts their feelings a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? You can't let them go out there. It's tough decisions. But I think that's kind of the situation with the Warriors, man. Like, look at how they handled the Draymond situation.
Yeah.
Look at how this Klay thing is going down. They're being super nice to these dudes and maybe letting them do more damage to themselves than they need to.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now with this whole Klay Thompson thing, is that when I look at kind of the stats and, again, stats don't lie. And the stats are saying that Klay Thompson, you're just not the same guy currently that you've been since, the last couple of years. Like, and I understand that the biggest thing for me in the Warriors situation right now, the reason why I think they're struggling so much is because they're trying to incorporate all these young guys into their rosters, into their lineups and rotations, because you could clearly see that if the Boston Celtics didn't self-capitulate last year in the NBA Finals, they would have won, and the Warriors would have went, defeated, and this would have changed the whole season coming up this year for them. They probably would have moved on from a couple guys, and they would have said, hey, we're moving on to having guys like Wiseman, guys like Kuminga, guys like Moody, all getting a significantly amount of more minutes. But because they won the championship last year, they have to kind of slow roll these guys into positions where guys like, we saw with Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole, same thing. Like, these guys are now starting to come for their jobs. They're starting to come for for their positions. They're trying to come for their minutes. And it's starting to, I think it's starting to affect some of these guys. I mean, like you said, I do think that Moses Moody should get a lot more minutes. I think he's getting about, 17 minutes a game. I think he should be at least at like 23.
Yeah.
Getting a little bit more.
He was good in the playoffs. Like, legitimately good.
Yeah, I mean, definitely good, man.
As much as we gave the Lakers and Pelinka, some crap about the signings they did, I think the same. You got to do the same for the Warriors. You got to. I mean, going to get DiVincenzo with the defensive guys they have on that squad is just as wild to me. I know Gary Payton had to go, right, based on the contract that Portland gave him. Juan Toscano-Anderson is gone. They wouldn't pay him as much either, but they did nothing to fix the defense of this team. And if you had been paying attention to that team throughout all the playoffs, through most of the season last year, they were solid, of course. They ended up winning the championship, not taking anything away from them. It literally took Draymond completely turning back the clock in those 2 games of the playoffs. Klay did the same thing to a certain extent. Those 2 dudes looked a few years younger than they actually were for a few games at the right time. At the right time, and they ended up winning. But they just weren't those guys for so many more games than not last season. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was so much evidence that you needed to do something for your defense, and they just didn't do anything. So I got to put some of it on Bob Myers. Some of it has to go on Bob Myers. Like, you got to go get defenders when you have Steph Curry as your best player. You have to. It's the same thing as going to get 3-point shooting when you have LeBron as your best player. You have to have defense around Steph because it's the only thing he doesn't give you, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Golden State Warriors are in a bit of a pickle right now as they kind of think about, I think that's the tough part when you have so many guys on your team that could potentially play for you or even, give you some good minutes, is that there's not a lot of minutes to go around for everybody, right? Curry's going to take up a majority of them. Wiggins right now is doing really well, so he's going to take up those minutes. Draymond Green starting to decline. You're starting to give some minutes away from his starting role. Jordan Poole's starting to emerge, so you give him minutes. Klay Thompson, like we just talked about, minutes starting to come down for him. Kevon Looney, always going to be around that 20 minutes per game mark because, as a center, he doesn't really give you too much on the offensive end. And if he's a liability on the defensive end at times, it's trouble. And then, of course, you got, like I said, guys like Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman, those guys. Those are kind of like your 3 investments that you're making into the future of, like, we want to see these guys eventually take their spots. But, man, it's tough for me to be like, it's a tough conversation to have. It's like anything in life. You have a veteran that's kind of doing his job out there in the work world, and all of a sudden you have this hot young shot that knows what he's doing and can make you a lot more money, and you're like, well, we gotta make decisions about finances. Like, the young guy is cheaper to hire. The older guy is going to take a lot more money and has a lot more resources that's taken away from him, whereas the young guy doesn't need as much, and then it leads to kind of some hostility there, and it kind of leads to, Klay Thompson kind of lashing out, like you said, in those games. Like, he was clearly lashing out, in my opinion.
Dude, 100%. And what does that come down to? That's panic that you see the finish line closing in, right? You see the guy that's 7 years younger than you on a team that won 64 games, and he's playing better than you did 7 years ago, or I should say, like you did 7 years ago. But he's not playing like you now. You now can't even compete. I think that is like, that's tough, man. That's really, really tough. As like, I think for all these athletes, and I can't relate, dude. I'm not an athlete in the slightest. Like, I would never even pretend. I never had any success as an athlete. I don't understand it. But from the outside looking in, I have a ton of empathy for that feeling. Like, you have been that guy for so long. You're still in a situation where everybody around you is telling you that you're that guy. Yeah. And they're just making you feel like, you have it, Klay. We know you have it. But that isn't always necessarily the nicest thing to do to somebody. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes being honest and putting somebody in the best position for them, regardless if they want it or not, is the thing to do. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean,
and go for it, Brady.
No, I was just gonna say, it's kind of like one of those things. Like, do you want to be honest, or do you want to kind of carouse and go around the situation? I think a lot of people would choose honesty. Actually, I actually think a lot of, actually, to be fair, opposite. You're right. Yeah. Because I think it's hard. The truth is hard sometimes. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you just don't have it. And, we've all kind of dealt with that experience, at least, of someone just telling us that straight up, or whether it was kind of the workaround. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I've swallowed my pills like that sometimes when it comes to work and when it comes to coaching, like, hey, you know, especially my first years, I'll admit, like, I was not a great coach, and
Mhm.
you know, I've kind of worked on that, and I've done so much stuff for it. You know, now that in my 6th year, I know what I'm looking for. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and I know what to do for that. And it's kind of like, you know, as you get older, you know, for sports it's a little bit different because as you get older, you know, it's
Yeah,
hard to continue that level unless you are, you know, Tom Brady and even LeBron James. But even those guys right now are starting to deal with some decline. Um,
sure. Yeah,
but you know, it's but with anything in life, I think that's kind of where it goes down to. But you're right, man. It's a hard pill to swallow for Klay Thompson. I think that, you know, kind of seeing a guy like Jordan Poole, you know, get a little bit more of the accolade, a little bit more of the
hmm
memes are going his way. You know, it used to be kind of like they talked about him, you know, Klay Thompson's different personalities. Now they make memes about Jordan Poole
cool. Looking
and
into the crowd,
and
talking to
with
girls.
and having Malika Andrews on the sideline.
Well, and Sean, really quickly, I know I'm not trying to get away from our new plan, Bernie, but Sean, we're going to answer your question, so don't
Yeah,
leave.
yeah,
We'll
for sure.
definitely talk about
Yeah,
that. I think the biggest thing for the Warriors, and this is my final
yeah.
takeaway, I
You
guess,
you
for
got
the
final point.
Warriors.
You got final point.
I really think, and this is why I have to go in on Bob Myers a little bit, and just the front office of this team. It's a have your cake and eat it too type of situation, right? Where you're trying to empower Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, and
Uh,
we want you guys. This is the dynasty. This is the Warriors. This is the Dubs, right?
yeah,
But you're also trying to empower these young guys, and there's a conflict of interest in terms of what that is telling both sides, right? You're
yeah,
telling the young guys that, hey, we still like these old guys. They're still going to make more money than you probably. But you're also telling the old guys, hey, these guys are kind of creeping up on you and we want them to be out there more than you. We think they're better than you. So there comes a time where you as a front office in any sport have to make a decision one way or the other, and you have to determine what's more important to you. Or is it more important to you to make your players feel loved regardless of where they're at in their career? There's tons of value in that. You can't have it the other way too, where you're saying, hey, we're going to be like the Patriots, like Bill Belichick, and we're going to trade and cut, or we want to play. More teams should be like that, to be fair, where you have to do what's right in terms of making business decisions and move it before it's too late. But this is an example of a team that is doing it both ways, and I just don't think it works. I really don't, especially when there's as much money involved as there is with this team. It's a
yeah,
different story if everybody's kind of mid-level and makes not that much money, right?
yeah,
But if you have guys like Jordan Poole and Wiggins who are creeping up on these big contracts, I mean, they have big contracts now, but you have these guys getting big contracts, and then you're trying to tell Klay and Draymond that they can get it too if they perform well. That's so much pressure for those dudes. It's so much pressure for them to go out there and live
yeah,
up to the expectations that you're setting for them financially, but also on the other side, you've now set Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole up for failure too, and we saw that. We saw Jordan Poole get his face punched in by Draymond. Like anybody that tells me that has nothing to do with the contracts and money situation, I think you're lying. I'm sorry. I just know adults too well. I am an adult. I've been an adult for a while now. I've been in rooms with people talking about money. That stuff, even if you're not talking about it on the surface, that is the subtext
yeah,
of conversations in the business world. These dudes are all trying to get the biggest contract they can to set their families up for the most success possible. You can't make them fight over it like scraps at a table. You can't do
yeah,
it and expect the chemistry to be good. So
yeah.
sorry to get on a little rant about that, but I do think
It's all
I do
good,
think
man.
that's poor business, and you have to realize that there is going to be some repercussions to, the old having your cake and eating it too financially. It
Yeah,
doesn't that's why you have Bob Myers out there like a clown talking about I hate paying the luxury tax. Then don't have so many guys that deserve $30 million contracts, man.
yeah.
Nobody else is doing it except you.
I mean, it's the kind of the price you pay for the championships, man. It's like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, you know, financially, you know, there's a lot of guys on this team that are probably going to be coming up, and then, like you said, there's some tough business decisions to make. And so, we'll see what the Warriors come up with in the future. But
Yeah.
let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys think of the Warriors right now? Should Klay Thompson be a starter? Should he be getting more minutes, less minutes than Jordan Poole? And if you were to trade away any of these guys on the Warriors right now, who would you trade away? Who would you invest in is really the real question. Would you invest in the older guys, or would you try to invest in the younger guys like Kuminga, like a Moody, like a Wiseman? Let us know in the comment section down below. Should we address Sean's comment? Is that
let's address Sean's question, because I think let's combine it with my segment of the day. All right.
okay?
I want to just do some potential trade discussions. Okay. And just kind of go back and forth with the two of us, talk about like who would benefit the most, which teams make the most sense. Because I do think we're going to see a couple big moves this season. I don't think that's crazy news, but we're going to see it. But yeah, I'll let you read Sean's question, and it'll be a good jumping in point for that.
Okay. So if you guys feel like talking about small clubs, which we never do, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the MVP? Is he in the MVP conversation, or is he a product of a bad team? That's a tough one.
Nope.
You don't think
Not
so?
in my opinion. I don't think it's a tough decision for me personally, but you know how I feel about SGA, so I'll let you go first.
Here's the thing that I will say, because I also have here the Kia MVP ladder right now of kind of players currently. So number one right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're the number one team in the NBA right now. I think that we have no qualms saying that Giannis at this current point is in the MVP conversation. The second
100%.
guy,
He's the best player in the league.
Second guy is Luka Doncic, who is rivaling. I can't talk today. He's a rival of
there we go.
He's a rival. Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks, obviously in the number 2 category. I think that he's playing like one of the best players in the world right now, close to that triple-double. 33 points, 8.3 rebounds, 7.9 assists. I mean, he is balling out at a level right now, and it's kind of the reason why the Dallas Mavericks are where they're at right now. Because without him, I think they're probably one of the worst teams in the NBA.
The only reason.
And I think that Luka at some point will cool off, just because it's 30-point game after 30-point game. At some point it's gonna have to end.
I mean, it did end. It did end yesterday.
Yeah, and meaning more so that like the hot streak. Like there's gonna be games where like Luka's just cold, and they lost to the Wizards obviously the other night. But again, I think Luka is probably obviously in the conversation. The next guy they have here at number 3 is Jason Tatum. Guy averaging 31, 6, and 4. You know how I feel about Tatum. I think he's one of the best players in the world. He was kind of my dark horse this year to win the MVP. Playing way better defense than he has been his last couple years. I credit that to kind of Ime Udoka, even though he's not on the team anymore. But kind of crediting him to kind of firing up on defense and getting him to like really commit to that next level. And really, I think the playmaking, I think, is what Missoula is really going to focus on for Tatum. Is how can I be a better playmaker for my guys and not just hog the ball the whole time? So, obviously, I think that he's in the conversation. This one also has Donovan Mitchell as an MVP candidate.
Honestly, Mitchell should be in the top 5. To me, it's not. If you got to watch the Cavs with Mitchell playing. I mean, he's
balling out for them,
and he's playing defense too, which is nasty.
And then obviously number 5 they have Ja Morant.
Maybe this is controversial. I honestly, currently, I'd put Shai above Ja Morant, personally.
And then here's who they have as their next 5. They have Booker, Jokic, Durant, Lillard, Curry. And then as kind of guys that they added as 5 more, Jaylen Brown, Paul George, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Pascal, and Trae Young.
Way too low. Way too low.
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, you go. I was just gonna say. I think the Ja one is a little nuts. Like to put him that high. I think he's been incredible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to throw too much shade. I just think like you're taking a lot away from how good Desmond Bane has been for that team. Desmond Bane has outscored Ja Morant a few nights. I know it's not all about scoring, but Desmond Bane's a better defender too. Like what are we even talking about at that point? Is it all Ja that's doing it for Memphis, or are we just talking about highlights with that team? Because that's what it seems like when we're putting him at top 5 right now. He's incredibly good, but he is certainly like God, man, this is like what I hate talking about the MVP because I think it gets so lost, like what it even is.
Yeah.
And that's why, like the Jokic ones, people threw so much shade at Jokic winning. But if you look at what that award is, he was the definition of the award. Like, you are the most valuable asset by a wide margin to your team's successes and just in general the day in and day out goings of your team. Ja is, I mean, look at how his team performed last season without him on the court. They were incredible. That's, to me, it would be, you'd be hard pressed to say he's the MVP if his team is going 21-5 without him. Same thing could be said about like guys like I'm not even going to come up with another guy. I don't want to throw shade at anybody. I'm not trying to throw shade at Ja, but I do think if you look at Shea, SGA, he's doing everything for that team. And the reason why I feel so strongly about Shea, I have tons of dudes that I could name you 5 guys in the league right now that I think are good stats, bad team guys. And historically, we've seen some, tons of good stats, bad teams that fool people all the time. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is not that. It's not the same thing. And another good comparison, Bernie, and I was going to ask you, like, how soon do you think it is that we start hearing more and more people talk about, Luka is the same thing as Russ and OKC, putting up triple doubles. It's not the same thing, but there's tons of people who just look at the purely the stat line and see it and say, oh, that's the same thing. He's on a bad team, doing everything he can to, fill that stat sheet. That's what Shea is doing, man.
Yeah.
And the dude's scoring 30 points, playing his butt off on defense, and he always does.
Yeah.
He play makes for others as often as he can, and he's super efficient. The problem with his team is that there's nobody good. There's a couple good guys like Jalen Williams and Giddey and these other guys, but they're all young. I mean, he's so. Ernie, I'm going to say your favorite thing that I say. It's an incredible conflict within the timeline of the OKC Thunder. It is an incredible conflict. He is so much better at this point in his career than the other dudes on that team are. It's not fair to him, man. And I have been petitioning. And I know you and Brad are so sick of it, and I refuse to stop now because I sent you that article last night. If you want to pull it up on, it was on Hoops Hype. It was, there's some speculation that SGA is getting upset with his team being bad. I told you it's gonna happen. He's too good. You look at guys like DeJounte Murray get traded to Atlanta. You could get a similar return, if not more, for SGA. I actually think that the Thunder would get more for SGA than the Spurs got for DeJounte. I mean, you got to look at that and say, man, I could go somewhere and really be on a team this year. I'm that good. I feel it. And I hope so, man, because I do think he's a legit MVP contender. I don't think with this team, he can't win because they're going to be so bad. You can't win the MVP and have an under 500 record. That's not okay, in my opinion, unless it's just some freakish aberration. And this is close, but it's not that much of a freakish aberration. You gotta send this guy somewhere where it makes more sense for him in his career. He's not even going to get to play with Chet until next season.
Yeah.
And you don't even know what Chet is. You still have no clue if it's even going to work. So then you're guessing for another season, speculating maybe it'll get better when Chet's here. Who knows who we get in the draft? But with SGA, you're limiting your losses anyway. Like he wins you games that you shouldn't win just by him being out there, which me is the definition of a good stats, good team guy. Usually guys who score good stats but are on bad teams for their whole careers, they don't win games. They just score good or score effectively in poor performances as a team, right? So I love Shea, man. At this point, and I told you and Brad this the other night too, I want him on the Knicks more than any other player in the NBA right now. But I just want to see him go somewhere else. I just want to see him go anywhere else. Just somewhere that can really put him in a position to compete and succeed, for a while. And I don't know what team that is, Bernie. Do you have any teams that you would like to see him on, or think that if they added him, it would be a huge difference maker?
I mean, if he could go to the Orlando Magic, I think that'd be a very interesting team. I think being able to go with Paulo, go with all those bigs, kind of replace Sean, I'm sorry to say it, but kind of replace Jalen Suggs as the point guard for that
Yeah,
team.
and Suggs back.
Kind of have Suggs as the backup point guard. I think that'd be a great team. I just think that even though Miami Heat, like putting Shea on the Heat as well, could be a good team. Team up with Jimmy Butler. It's tough, man. It's tough because I agree in a sense where I think if Shea Gilgeous kind of expresses his frustration, then if I'm the Thunder organization, I'm looking to immediately get better the next year. Because I think he's a tremendous talent. And I just think really what it boils down to me is like thinking back to that trade that sent Paul George for Shea Gilgeous essentially. And I honestly would have just kept Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and kind of kept the team the way that it was, and bringing Kawhi during the free agency period, and I think that would have been so much better than getting rid of Shea Gilgeous. Because I think Shea Gilgeous, like you said, is a great player. He's a tremendous player, and he really is something that even the Lakers need at this point, like a scoring guard that can do a lot of great things.
Best player on their team. I love LeBron. Right now, he's the best player on their team.
Yeah, he would be the best player on their team, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now when it comes to the Shea Gilgeous thing. Is I don't know if I necessarily think that he's an MVP candidate in terms of like top 5, but he's definitely in the top 10. Like he's balling out. He's doing a lot of great things for the Oklahoma City Thunder, even if they're 4-7. It's not the worst record in the world if we look at it. There's a lot of other teams that are worse than them. Obviously, the Lakers included, Sacramento Kings in that sense, also Orlando Magic, even though they're competitive, or even the Charlotte Hornets. Like they are a decent team, but at the same time, I think what it's going to boil down to for Shea Gilgeous is, and I know you hate me saying it, but like sticking with the Thunder and building this team around him and Chet when he's healthy. You have Jalen Williams. You have a bunch of guys on this Thunder team that I think if you give them another year or two, they're going to be just like the Orlando Magic in a couple years where they're competitive. Maybe they're losing, but they're competitive. And I think that's all that really matters for these guys is at this point, just to be competitive, even when they lose.
Sure. No, I mean, I agree with you. I always have to just say, how many times can we say another year for Sam Presti? I'm sorry. I'll be the one guy on the mountaintop, disagreeing that he's the God's gift to general managers in the NBA. I think he's done a great job in certain aspects, but man, there is not a human being on earth that gets more leeway for putting out bad product than this dude does. There is not a human being in any job that gets more leeway than Sam Presti does, or more positive feedback for not necessarily tangible results, I guess is what I'm saying. Like it always is like speculative. Hey, he's doing so great in theory. We'll see it eventually. God, man, you got to see it at some point. Like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is almost an accident how well it's worked out for them.
Yeah.
They were going for first round picks in that trade. They got 4 firsts. I think it was Shea and Danilo Gallinari, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. It worked out great because you ended up with Shea and all those firsts, but still, like, it hasn't turned into anything yet. And I on paper, Bernie, I couldn't really disagree with you because I'm a huge Giddey person. I think he's an incredible long-term point guard in the NBA. I think he's just going to get better and better as like a pure. He's like one of the best young, like traditional looking point guards I've seen in a long time. Like he does a lot of the things that like you just want a guy who handles the ball to do well. Yeah. Well, he's got it. Which that's perfect next to Shea because Shea can do that and he can play, mostly play the 2. Like put him out there and just let him shoot. Yeah. I just want to see it not get wasted for so long, man. Like that's my biggest thing. It's the biggest thing for me.
I know. And that's the frustration. I get it, man. It sucks.
I think let me give you 2 teams that I would love to see him on.
Yeah, what teams?
Right? And I think that it would legitimately change their fortunes as teams if he went here. I'll give you my second one, and then I'll give you my number 1 candidate first. Yeah. Number 2 is Dallas. I think if you got him next to Luka, he's a perfect fit with Luka. He plays defense super hard. He's big. They're unguardable. If you have both of them on the court, what do you even do as a defense? It's impossible as far as I'm concerned because they can play make for each other. They can both shoot the lights out. That's one of the best pairings I think you could find in the NBA. And it's kind of like it would be Dallas's counter to what Atlanta did with Trae. Let's go get DeJounte for Trae, which is a perfect fit, and we've seen it, really work out for Atlanta. Yeah. Hey, we traded Trae for Luka. Let's go get the perfect fit for Luka and put, SGA next to him. Plus, they need any scoring they can get in Dallas. The problem with them, they just don't have enough to go get him. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I would like to see it. Number one, Bernie. Number one, and this would be a little bit of a hamper in terms of seeing SGA as like truly as good as he is, but send him to New Orleans. New Orleans has all the pieces to make a move for a really good young player. And imagine SGA in that offense running the point with CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jonas Valanciunas. That is the best team in the NBA by a little bit of a margin as far as I'm concerned. Like, I think that's pretty tough to beat. And defensively, they're super long. Minus CJ, they can do all sorts of switching and just be all over the place. I think that would be nasty. The only other team I thought, and I haven't even heard this as like a rumor anywhere, not that I heard Dallas or New Orleans, but I mean, what about your Celtics, Bernie? What about your Celtics? Marcus Smart hasn't looked like Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart this season. And I'm not trying to go back because I rode really hard for Marcus Smart last season. He changed my opinion on him dramatically. I love Marcus Smart at this point. But you still have Tatum and you still have Brown and you still have the core to go get a championship. What about, I mean, people might say this is me just feeding back into the super team thing, but they don't have the vibe of a super team even if you went and got SGA. They just would have the talent of a super team. And I think I think the Celtics have a little bit of room for concern with the Cavaliers joining this Eastern Conference race. I think that it's not as simple of a run for them making it back to the finals. So I think they should consider going to get something else too. So another big defender, somebody who can score too if Tatum isn't making shots or Brown is off. I think that would be really nice. Obviously, the Knicks are my number one, but we don't need to talk about that. Man, I think SGA is, Sean, to answer your question again, I think SGA is that guy. I think he is super good. I wouldn't put him top 5 either, Bernie. I agree with you. He's not top 5 MVP candidate, but
he's definitely in the top 10. I think that, he'll get some recognition. I think, like you said, at some point it's going to have to be time to like really think about, okay, what are the Thunder? What are they trying to do? Because again, like you said, Shai Gilgeous is 26 years old right now. And, as much as he is part of a timeline with those guys, he could also not be, right? In terms of like the age, like he's like at the cusp of like, okay, now is the time to start building around this team. Now is the time to like get the team going so you can finally like see what you have with all those draft picks that you got. And so we'll see what happens, man. It's going to be a very
Let me ask you this, Bernie.
All right.
Let's say New Orleans puts that Lakers pick and one dude up for Shai. Who says no first? You could add a little bit more too, but I think that Lakers pick is like the most valuable pick in the NBA right now.
As of right now, probably just because you have
LeBron's not even playing. They're going to be terrible. I mean, they're going to be terrible for most of the season. So it's a pretty safe bet that it's going to be a good pick.
Yeah. I don't know. It's tough.
I think it's a fair question, Bernie. Like with OKC, and we're not going back into it too deep. I just think like they could really, if there's any season for them to tank, it's this season. So I just question like when is Presti gonna like really think about that? We could go get all the assets we need to truly have locked, loaded, sealed deal. Wembanyama, we're right in there. Yeah. They could go get that guy and have their next Kevin Durant. So I don't know. Let's talk about a few more trades, Bernie, real quick. All right.
Okay.
I think we need to talk about the biggest name that is possibly going to get traded in the near future, and I think that's Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant is right there in this trade situation, sweepstakes. Before we talk about like where he might go, what we think would be a good fit, who could put a good package together. Let me ask you this. What do you think is the likelihood that KD gets traded in the next year?
4 on. I'm gonna go him get traded. I'd probably say I'll go 40%.
40%. I like that guess because you're right there in the reasonable.
It's getting hot.
Section.
Starting to get hot.
I agree.
Starting to get hot.
I'm going to do the same thing as you, but on the opposite side of certainty of where I think it's going to go. I'm going to say 60%. I think he gets traded. There's still a lot of doubt that who knows? It could still not happen, but I lean towards the fact that the Nets are going to decide like, hey, we need to just get stuff back and start setting the course for our future rather than trying to, glue together a broken vase, so to speak.
Yeah.
I would say 60, you say 40. So we're right there.
I mean,
who do you think would be a good fit, or do you think that there's like a team that would like go above and beyond in terms of putting a package together?
I could see I think it was Brad. Was it Brad or you talking about the Toronto Raptors?
I think that was Brad.
I mean, Raptors would be a good shout. I honestly think the Miami Heat. Like, you just go play in South Beach and you're still in the East.
Imagine him with Spoelstra as his coach.
Yeah. Solid.
Jimmy Buckets. Yeah, man. I like that a lot too. I think Miami would be really fun. And that to me would be one of the best fits for him as far as you take the culture building leadership aspect of basketball completely out of his hands. Like, hey, we have it here. The culture, we have Heat culture. We have it. We don't need KD culture. Like, let's just be that. And I think the same thing could be said about Memphis too. I actually don't like. I know that trade has been out there for all summer and people talk about it a lot. That's a bad example of fitting the timeline. Like, it would be good in terms you are going to compete in the next couple of years, but you do maybe sell your future a little short as far as how long that run could go. What about the Lakers, Bernie? You think the Lakers have any chance? Because there's a lot of people talking about it. I think there's 0 chance that they do it unless AD is in the deal somehow. I agree with you. Yeah.
Of course.
At this point,
I was on mute. I was on mute that whole time, but yeah, I don't think KD is yeah, Sean, I saw it.
He's back.
But yeah, I don't think at this point that Kevin Durant is, they're not going to give up a farm for him. There's going to be one of those situations where, we saw it in the summer. No one wanted to give him a bag. No one wanted to do anything for him. And so I think for me, like, I just can't see it. I can't see them trying to give up a ton to get KD.
See, I do think somebody could easily find themselves in the position where it's like, hey, what are we even waiting for? Like, this is Kevin Durant, right? Like, he is desperate to get out of here. I mean, that's kind of a stupid, obvious thing to say, but that's going to be the difference between if any traction starts happening or not. Like, how much does any one team want him, right? And I'll tell you, there's a few teams in the league that are positioning themselves in like the thirst sweepstakes for any next superstar. Like, there's a couple teams, and you're looking at the logo of one of them. Like, the Knicks they're straight up desperate. Like, they are desperate to get off of some of these contracts and to capitalize on all the assets they have. And it's not even to be a homer and just talk about the Knicks, because I do think they're important in terms of the the dominoes of this NBA season. Like, they have a ton of assets, a ton of desirable contracts in their young guys, and more so than anything else. And I think that this is something that's going under talked about in mainstream media since they guess you could say they flopped on the Donovan Mitchell thing. Now it looks like a flop, but I stand by how I felt then. Like, don't go get him. He didn't play defense in Utah. He's playing it now, but regardless, the difference is you have one of the biggest cities in the world, if not the biggest city in the world, New York City, and you have a bunch of guys in that front office that are going to get fired this offseason if they don't do anything. So that is a huge they could trade. Plus, youthful guys. So if let's say KD put his request back out on the block and said, "Hey, I do still want to get out of here," that's a team that might go for it, right? And the Warriors, man. I mean, think about the Warriors. We were talking about them in our chat too. Like, they're a team that if it keeps going poorly, they have a ton of assets to go make a trade. And Bob Myers already said, "Hey, I wouldn't mind KD coming back." So he's definitely a guy to consider. I think he's the hardest one to talk about just because we saw how poorly it went when he put the trade request in the first place. Like, no traction was made anywhere. There wasn't even really good rumors out there of people having discussions, which I think is a clear sign that there just wasn't anything to even report that was going on. So I would still look out for Phoenix too. I think Phoenix why wouldn't they call back? Why wouldn't they? Especially if Mikal Bridges keeps playing the way he is. He could be a huge piece in sending back, like Mikal Bridges and Ayton and a bunch of picks. That's not a bad return. Not great, but not KD, but it's a good return. Let's move on to the next player, Renee. I got 2 or 3 more that I want to talk about real quick. All right?
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
Big one for me. And we can discuss whether or not this actually matters that much for this team, if it changes anything, what they could get, if it would change it. But we got to talk about Minnesota, Bernie. We got to talk about them.
Minnesota.
I have never fallen subject to the heat of the moment, old, I love this team more than I did with this Minnesota Timberwolves team. And please don't do this, folks in the chat, but if you wanted to, you can go back and look at our stream when the Rudy Gobert trade happened. I was freaking out. I was like, I love it. I love all the chemistry, or not the chemistry, but the on-court chemistry, I guess, the fit more so than anything. And boy, was I wrong. But a lot of that has to do, I would argue a lot of that has to do with Karl Anthony Towns. He's been good, but it's one of those things where is his version of good really helping that team succeed? And I mean, we have long debated again. We've debated Karl Anthony Towns as a player so many times I can't even count, for many years too. There's nobody on that team that is more likely to be traded than him. Anthony Edwards is not getting traded. Rudy Gobert can't be traded, and he isn't going to get traded because they would never get the return that they just sent for him.
Yeah.
So they couldn't accept defeat on the Rudy Gobert. So it's Karl Anthony Towns. But they have way too much money tied up in that team not to do anything. So I almost am starting to believe that it's more of an inevitability than anything else. Like, it's going to happen at some point, in my opinion. The Karl Anthony Towns is going to get traded. My question to you, Bernie, is do you think there's anything they could do that would actually help them as far as trading Karl Anthony Towns, and where do you think he should go?
That's a tough one, because I think if I really think about like what team could use Karl Anthony Towns at this point, let me take a look at these teams really quick. I mean, it's just kind of like,
I think like Atlanta is pretty interesting. Atlanta's pretty interesting,
but they're winning right now, man. I don't know if you'd ruin that chemistry. If I was the Hornets, I'm looking to make any trade package that, I don't know if they have anything, but I'm looking to like get him to team up with LaMelo Ball.
You don't think they're so bad they should just stick on the Wembanyama or nothing situation?
I mean, if they get nothing, then it's
yeah, true. That's a super fair point for any of these teams. Are we actually going to end up with the guy that we're tanking for? Is it worth? Could we go get something that's guaranteed? I think that's a super fair point.
Or if I'm the Chicago Bulls, could I look to trade and get Anthony Towns and team up with Levine and Caruso
Well,
and all them and DeRozan.
Spoiler, we're going to talk about Anthony Davis in a minute too. I want to go back to Anthony Davis and introduce him to the segment. But Karl Anthony Towns is in the same situation with Chicago being a pretty good fit. Like Vucevic has been not that guy. You know, that trade, we've talked about it a few times too. That is one of the worst trades in recent memory. Yeah, that's god awful, that trade. Man, Karl Anthony Towns he would fit that team pretty well, but then they have no interior defense. Like they have so little as far as, you know, any rim protection and
what about your Knicks? Your Knicks could use them.
Yeah. So this is where I'm going to be the saddest I'm going to be on this whole stream, because I do think I just went on my little Knicks tirade about they are the biggest domino moving piece of the NBA season right now, as far as a team that could be introduced into any of these superstar trade sweepstakes. They're the biggest piece. I want it to be KD. I want it to be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but the problem is that I feel like the Karl Anthony Towns situation is creeping up much faster than those ones are. And I also feel like the Anthony Davis one is creeping up a lot faster too. That being said, the Kentucky connection runs very deep with the New York Knicks front office, and Karl Anthony Towns is, I mean, he's right in the heart of that.
He's a wildcat, baby.
Right in the heart of that. So it's pretty ugly as far as my outlook, because I do think we're going to end up with either him or AD if we end up with anybody this season. I just don't know if it helps, man. I'm not a big cat guy, man. I really have never been. You have to put him in a really good situation, I think, for it to truly work. One thing for the Knicks that works really well is just he does provide exactly what they're the worst at, which is 3-point shooting. Like you gotta get some more 3-point shooting. I actually am curious, like, I mean, what about Anthony Davis for Cat? What if they swapped? You know, is that a reality in any way, shape, or form? Because I'm not sure that doesn't benefit both of those teams. Karl Anthony Towns can shoot for the Lakers. He's not as great on defense, which they're also terrible on defense, the Lakers. But I don't know. Maybe AD is a better fit with Gobert, and I don't think he is either. I don't know, man. That one's really tough. But I do think Karl Anthony Towns needs to get moved. I would look at Atlanta. I know that you think they're winning. Why mess it up? But I mean, imagine Karl Anthony Towns slotting in for Capella, and then, you know, John Collins is fine. He's been playing really well this season so far as John Collins is concerned, in my estimation of him. I still am not sure about him as like long-term, that's your guy. But if you had DeJounte Murray, Trey, and Karl Anthony Towns, you're a very hard team to defend on offense. And you have just incredible amounts of size and versatility again with that team.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's tough because I think the Minnesota Timberwolves issues, I think, stem from a lot of things. And I think to blame it all on those two guys, I think would be a cop-out. I think Anthony Edwards does deserve some accountability as well in terms of, I think there's some playmaking stuff that he needs to work on as a guard, that he could easily like hit those guys on some quick lobs.
Yeah, but he's not that guy, though. I mean, they don't even really have a point guard. That's probably one of their biggest problems, is just not having anybody who can play make and handle. Because here, I'm looking at Hoops Hype actually just put out their top 100 trade value piece, 4.0 for the year. And they have Karl Anthony Towns as the number 20th highest ranked trade value. I mean, if you're Minnesota, and there is actually people that believe he's that good as far as a trade asset, I don't understand not getting something for him now, because I think the writing is on the wall as far as your level of success with this guy is one of your best players. So do you think he's the 20th highest trade value in the league?
Who?
I mean, it's all Karl Anthony Towns. It's all abstract make believe, but like I don't know about it.
I don't know if he has trade value right now. I don't know. To me,
He does, but not like they have him, for example, he's number 20. Here's the next three players. Are you ready? They have number 21 is Scotty Barnes. I think that's insanity. Scotty Barnes is way more valuable than Karl Anthony Towns, in my estimation. Pascal Siakam has been better than Karl Anthony Towns for a year and a half straight at this point. Cade Cunningham's number 23. All three of those dudes, in my opinion, are way more valuable than Karl Anthony Towns. But if there's people who think Karl Anthony Towns is that valuable, pull a Rudy Gobert yourself and go get some crazy value in return and reset the deck a little bit.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. But, it's kind of like the bed that you chose to sleep in, right? Like they have decided that this is kind of where they're going right now with their roster. So we'll see what happens, man. It'll be interesting.
All right, let's quickly talk about two more. Anthony Davis, let's just bust through the Anthony Davis conversation.
Anthony Davis.
If they put him up, do you think they could get a return that's justifiable in even trading him? One, and where do you think he should go, Bernie?
Oh, I mean, if he was to go anywhere, oh man, this is a tough one. I mean, I would look to see if any of those Warriors pieces would want to come to LA.
Bernie, you are going right in the direction I wanted to go, and I love it. The Warriors should be looking so hard at Anthony Davis. I actually love that trade for both teams. I love that trade because you could get younger with, a couple pieces in return. Like throw Moody and Wiseman. Why not? You throw them in the trade and then get Klay or Draymond, whichever one you want more, because I bet you could get one of them. And then take a couple picks, because all that together, people might say, like Warriors fans in particular might say, wow, that's a horrible trade, but you have to do that. I mean, the Klay or Draymond contract, whatever it is not that valuable. So throwing that in there with, a couple young guys and a bunch of picks, that's kind of a win for both teams, because he's exactly what the Warriors need. A super defensive center, but he can actually shoot and give you a little bit more offense. And in that offense, like, he'd be better. I mean, he's not the same AD as he was, but with the Warrior spacing and ball movement, he'd be better. That's for certain. So I love that trade for both teams. I think that would be so interesting to see him go there.
Yeah, I think either there or he should go to maybe the place where it all started. Go to New Orleans.
Back to New Orleans. See, now, this is a weird one. I'm going to sound a little contradictory again to my Kevin Durant Memphis thing, but I don't think Memphis is terrible, especially with how often Jaren Jackson Jr. is hurt. I love Triple J. I've been big on him since he came into the league. Mm-hmm. That being said, if they could have a consistent piece in that spot, it would be the one seed in the West probably. Right now, that is. Yeah. So I think that would be interesting for them. I don't know if I would do that either, though, because it is similar enough to the KD. The timeline situation does not line up very well for that one. Let's move on from AD. I do think he's a little bit boring, and you took my biggest idea, which is the Golden State one. I love that. I love it. The last one, Bernie.
My final one.
Last one. And this one, this one is much more speculative than the other ones. We've talked about it in our text chats a little bit, but let's talk about Joel Embiid. Let's just go three centers in a row to end it all. The Philly situation doesn't seem to be going super well. Harden's out for a month. They have one of the worst coaches in the league, in my opinion. Sorry, cough, cough, Doc Rivers. He's not one of the worst coaches, but he's definitely not great for that team. That being said, I do think there's a situation in which Joel Embiid is in that running to be the next big superstar shock. I can't play with these guys anymore. So I'm not sure. I think with Morey, I think there is always a chance that a move happens, just because it's Morey. He's going to do whatever, he beats to the beat of his own drum, so to speak. And I believe, isn't he's the GM and the president of basketball operations, I
believe
think,
so,
Daryl Morey. He could really make a lot of the choices. He already clearly does, because like I called them last week, they are the Houston 76ers at this point. Like, Philadelphia Rockets in full effect. Do you think that Embiid could be traded, Bernie? Do you think they would do it?
I don't think they would. I think it would be one of those things where I think he's so beloved in Philadelphia that I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think he would necessarily get traded. But what I could see potentially is, Embiid leaving in free agency and saying, I gave it all my all in Philly, but we don't have a competent roster to contend for a championship, so I got to move on. So I could see him leaving via free agency rather than by trade.
I could see that too, but let's just speculate just in case. Let's just talk about where we would see Embiid the most, or what we would like to see the most for Embiid. Because I'll tell you right off rip, Bernie. Again, I know I already said your team for a different one, but Celtics with Embiid and Tatum, come on. I mean, that's something. I don't know if they have anywhere near enough to go get him if he was even available. It would have to probably be Jaylen Brown, which at that point I would start questioning: is it even worth it? Are we giving up too much now to go get? Do we cripple ourselves just to make a swap, basically, or are we improving enough to justify doing this? Right.
Yeah.
I do think he would fit super well in Boston if you had some package of Robert Williams and stuff, and that's talk about you're a serious contender for the next 5 years if you could go get Embiid of all people. And I think he could play in Boston too. Like that's something to consider, I think, with anybody going to Boston. Are they going to fit in that city and be able to, find their way into being a beloved member of that organization? And I honestly think he could. I think he's got like the toughness and the grit. He made it in Philly. I mean, Philly loves him, but again, that's why I think they just can't trade him. I think Philly fans would riot if they sent Embiid somewhere.
What about sending him to the I don't even know where you can send him. I mean, you can send him to the
What about Phoenix?
Phoenix should be an interesting one. I mean, you have a disgruntled I mean, even though they're 8-3 right now, they're kind of balling. But, I don't think at this current point that Ayton is really playing the way that he should or has been these last couple years. I mean, 14 points this year.
Yeah, definitely he's not the Ayton that I was ranting and raving about 2 seasons ago. He's not that guy right now. But I mean, if you have an argument and refuse to go in the what was it, the Western Conference Finals or the semifinals? Not the quarterfinals. It was that against Dallas. If you have a freak out and don't want to go back out on the court and have this big argument with your coach and then don't talk to him for 4 months, probably that's why I shaded them so much coming into the season. I was wrong because Booker has outperformed, but yeah, I think they're a legit team because I mean they were the only ones that made any actual moves to try and get to KD, and I don't know I think Embiid is probably even harder to get than KD is, so I don't think they can do it, but they would be an interesting team. It'd be a very interesting team, and I would question if they would actually could they send enough back to Philly where Philly feels like, hey, we're actually a little bit better now, but I just don't think they have enough to do that. So I don't think Philly would ever do it. Because Philly, the one thing with Philly, they would never trade Embiid for anything that's speculative. Like no picks, no young players. We want guys who make us win now. Yeah. So that's why I think he's the hardest of these guys to trade so far.
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. We got all the players I wanted to talk about as far as big trades because one to two of those guys that we just discussed, I think will get traded this season.
Wow, you think so?
I do think so. And if I had to rank them, I think Karl Anthony Towns is number one.
Wow.
Most likely. I genuinely think he gets traded this season. I think they cannot have a season where they're not in the playoffs after sending all that for Rudy Gobert. They can't do it. It might still happen, but they can't just let it happen without trying something. So I do think there is a realm of possibility where I think it's going to happen. I think SGA is certainly on the table, but I would actually put AD at number 2 because I just don't see what else the Lakers can do to set themselves up for next season. Because really, that's going to be the moment that the Lakers hit where things start to change dramatically. And I'm not trying to get into the Lakers, but they are going to hit a point of no return where now we need to worry about, like, are we going to be even worse next season? Yeah. And they can't do that. So AD being moved, I would put that number 2. And I do think, again, I think 2 of those guys get moved between SGA, AD, and Cat, and then somebody else. Maybe Bam. I thought about Bam. We didn't talk about him, but he could get moved at some point too.
Yeah. Let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys make of these trade scenarios? Do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? Let us know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Well, all right, Pete. I think that's going to do it here for the charge. Thank you again for tuning on. I know that it was a quick turnaround, but I think that we've kind of done well. And like I said, I do apologize to everybody from last week that we didn't stream. Definitely was not feeling the best, and so we had to call it off that day. We'll let you know about if there's another stream going on this week. I just have to confirm some things with some people and seeing if there is going to be one on a Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, again, thank you, Pete, for coming on, man. It's been a blast. Always talking basketball, always talking these storylines that continue to pop up in the NBA. It's been a lot of fun, man.
Oh yeah, my man. It's always a pleasure. I mean, we've been doing it for years now. It doesn't get any less fun, in my opinion. So
yeah,
be doing it for a long time, as far as I'm concerned.
I feel it. But anyway, guys, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of all these stories? But please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. All this stuff does help out the channel tremendously. It lets us know that you guys are engaged in the content. It also lets us know, what do you guys want from the content? Do you guys want to talk about, what's going on in the Lakers or the Nets, and like what else is going on, from teams that we may not talk about very often. Obviously the Jazz being one of them, even though we recognize their run and strengths that they're going on. Pete has brought it up tremendously with Will Hardy, what he's been able to do. And so, all that stuff lets us know what you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, I forgot. We didn't talk about Lauri Markkanen even a little bit. Next time we stream, we're having at least a 5-minute conversation about Lauri Markkanen. Next time.
Well, let's do it. Let's do it. If it's this weekend, it's this weekend. If it's not, we'll let you guys know. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. This has been Pete. Thank you once again for joining us here on the channel. Again, giving the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Friday afternoon. Enjoy it, and we'll catch everybody on the next video of The Charge. Peace out,
veterans. Thank you guys all for your service.